Alright, what's going on, guys? So, I've been doing a lot of thinking recently. I've completed 2 full playthroughs of Elden Ring, and something has been gnawing at the back of my mind for quite a while now. And the things I'm about to say I know are probably going to tick a few people off. So before you leave a hate comment, at least hear me out all the way through, because we may end up agreeing, but if we don't, I wholeheartedly welcome the disagreement. This video is not me trying to claim to be right about anything. I'm just going to be shooting my thoughts off for the next 8 minutes. But the core of my message today is that I think it's time for FromSoftware to move on. And that, to be honest with you guys, I really don't want an Elden Ring 2. I'm all for some DLC, but I have a plethora of things about Elden Ring that I think worked out fantastic for a one-time game. However, I feel that if they try to replicate these things, it probably isn't going to work too well a second time. And the best way for me to kind of organize my thoughts on this is to tackle this in list format and break it down point by point, so let's go ahead and begin. The first thing that I feel is kind of tried and true but also burned out is the FromSoftware's signature dead world. One of the things I was really hoping that Elden Ring would change in the Souls formula is to not make everybody in the game either completely insane or undead. And let me explain what I mean by that. When we were first introduced to the concept of the many demigods around the world of Elden Ring, it was heavily theorized that one of the main aspects of the game was going to be the sort of faction war, and that we as the player might be able to side with some of these demigods and alternate endings rather than just killing them all and helping make the world even more dead than it already is. Now, I understand this may not be everybody's taste, but personally, one thing that I was really hoping for was that we would get to experience this world in its prime, that we would be able to influence the happenings of the land and sort of play into the politics of everything going on, that perhaps we could side with maybe Godric and help him take over the lands between. And I can't help but feel like that's what made Ranni's ending so appealing. We got to experience somebody who still saw this world as their home. Somebody with influence and power that wasn't in a complete state of mindlessness. And it was a very fleshed out quest. It really felt like we were helping influence something greater than the standard hero's journey. It made the world feel like there was still some civilization to it. And I really hope that in the next major FromSoftware game, we get to play in a world that people still live in. It can still have all the dark and eldritch secrets that we know and love, but give us a reason to also live in the world, and add that extra layer to it, where it doesn't always feel like we're playing in a skeleton of something that once was. The next thing I want to talk about is boss fights. I gotta say 100% from the bottom of my heart, it's time to change. Souls boss fights need a major overhaul, and this is one of the things that really didn't show up in the first playthrough of Elden Ring, but once I started getting to the end game in my second playthrough, I just felt a deep wanting for something more. I feel like there's another layer that should be on top of these boss fights, but just isn't. And I have a few ideas in a way that an evolution to FromSoftware boss fights could work. They just need another layer to them. And whether that comes in the form of some new mechanics, I'm not entirely sure, but I'm tired of simply rolling through attacks and attacking in the free time. Sekiro had a great step forward in implementing a dual system of beating the boss. You could choose to break their posture by engaging in fast and quick combat and never letting off the gas, or you could focus on breaking down the boss's health bit by bit. Now, I'm not saying this is the system I'm looking for, but it's on the right train of thought. So let me give you just a basic example of what an evolved boss fight could look like. Let's say during the Godric boss fight, you can attack different parts of his body and knock chunks off of his grafted form. And depending on what you knock off, his moveset might change. Now, around the map, there's different things that he could graft onto himself. Say there are 2 dragon heads on the map, and whatever different creature you can think of to graft onto his form. Now, when you knock off different things from him, they fall onto the ground and have their own health pool. And so throughout the fight, he may try to go and pick up different things to graft onto himself. But since they have health pools of their own, you have the option to go out there and break them. Now, it's a pretty simple change, but look at how many layers this adds. So you have the standard fight with Godric, but now you have an option to focus on different parts of his body and change his moveset to your preference. But while that's going on, you also have the thought in the back of your head that you could be running around the arena and breaking the things that at any moment he could potentially graft. And I'm not saying this is the perfect change, but can you see how this adds so many more layers to the fight and would make it so much more unique? It's evolved past the point of simply roll and attack. Now, if you can think of potential evolutions for some of the boss fights, let me know those down in the comments, because I do not think, in fact I know I don't have all the answers, but this is just a thought process I'm trying to follow. And again, I don't dislike Elden Elden Ring boss fights, I think they're great. Souls boss fights are some of the best in gaming and for a reason, but I'd be lying if I didn't say I was a little bit burnt out. And speaking of being a little bit burnt out, I'm ready to move on to a new setting. Let's explore different types of fantasy than simply medieval Europe. It's part of the reason why I like Sekiro so much. It had a very distinct culture to it. Being able to explore this fantasized feudal Japan made it feel so fresh, and Bloodborne did this too. It showed that the FromSoftware signature can be applied to something other than just castles, swamps, and volcanoes. And this is what made the Eternal City in Elden Ring stand out so much. It felt so different. It felt like it had a different culture to it. And I guess Caelid as well, but I felt Elden Ring really suffered from having the same biomes as Dark Souls. And maybe suffered isn't the right word, but I feel if they were to do it again, it very well could. Now, just a random idea that I had a while back. I put up a post over on the community tab a long time ago before Elden Ring came out about how much I liked the idea of a FromSoftware pirate game. And after thinking about it for a while, it really got me inspired to see where FromSoftware could take their formula. And I would absolutely nerd out if they ever tried to go the route of dark sci-fi. The potential with this is really limitless, and I would really hate to see them just kind of stagnate on this idea of medieval Europe. And with Bloodborne and Sekiro being two of their highest rated games ever, it wouldn't even be much of a gamble. Now, this last hope of mine might be a little bit controversial, and if you disagree with me on this, I am more than open to hearing your opinion. But I really hope that in future FromSoftware titles, we get more involved multiplayer. Because let's take a look at what we have right now. PvP and co-op are good. I think the idea and the way Souls has implemented invasions is one of the best multiplayer innovations in gaming history. But it's been virtually unchanged for almost 13 years. And I think just like the boss fights, it's time for an evolution. We need another layer. Duels and co-op are fun, but there's no incentive to do them. And I know it's kind of a touchy subject because if we talk about multiplayer, we tend to start to toe the line of live service games, which I know a lot of people really don't like. But like I was talking about earlier with the faction wars between the demigods, imagine if there was some sort of open world battlefield where players could use their characters and go in this ever-waging war, constantly fighting for control over the territory. Now, I know ESO does something like this, but the combat in that game was absolutely terrible. However, I loved the concept of that ground war, and to just think that that could somehow be translated with Souls combat. Like, imagine little forts scattered all over this area and maybe one or two big legacy dungeons in it that has like 50 to 150 players constantly fighting to control key points around the map. And I'm not talking about a battle royale. It can be joined and left at any time, and your player stays the same across PvE and PvP. And once again, I'm not saying that's the perfect evolution, just my idea, and I'm very interested to hear yours. Now, those are just some ways that I think FromSoftware going forward could stay at the top of their potential. Absolutely none of this is to say Elden Ring is a bad game. You guys know full well I've been hyping this game up for over a year, and it met all of my expectations and then some. However, I don't want to see another Elden Ring. And if we get an Elden Ring 2, I want it to be vastly different. Something that evolves the Souls games, instead of relying so heavily on Dark Souls. But that's just my opinion. I'm really interested to hear what you guys think, so let me know down in the comments. And if you enjoyed the video, be sure to leave a like on it and subscribe if you're new around here, and I'll catch you in the next one.